guns, chicks, and ballots in your mailbox. Welcome to another edition of Truth TV. Two Democrat attorneys general take on the NRA in the run-up to the presidential election. Is this a coincidence, or is a more sinister political game at play? Liberty Nation's Scott Cosenza is on top of this one and is here to give you the scoop. Joe Biden's VP pick, Kamala Harris, checks all the intersectionality boxes. But what do women really think of her? LN's Red State correspondent Sarah Cowgill has some surprising observations. And in my Viewpoint segment today, a November hurricane is on the horizon, with 76% of Americans able to vote by mail. Stay tuned for all this and more in America's top online conservative news program.
Truth is making a comeback.
The attorneys general in New York and the District of Columbia are going hard after the largest gun lobby in America, the National Rifle Association. Both have filed civil suits against the NRA. These suits on the cusp of the presidential election could mean a huge blow to Donald Trump in November and against gun rights advocates that could last a generation. Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor Scott Cosenza is all over this story and joins us now with the latest. Welcome to Truth TV, Scott.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you.
So what's this all about?
This is all about what seems to be two progressive prosecutors using the power of their office to hobble one of the most potent forces that could hand a win to Donald Trump in November. I think that's some speculation, but the timing seems to indicate that.
All right, don't you find this an odd time, politically speaking, to try to take down the NRA, especially when Americans are buying guns in record numbers this year? I was just talking to a hairstylist, and she said she went out and bought a gun, and when she went into the gun store, it was packed.
I think that's probably true if you're looking at politics nationally or with a mind towards the presidential race. But another thing that these attorneys general have been able to do is elevate themselves politically. And so they may not be thinking in terms of the timing with whether it's the most beneficial there, but for the perception of their own political futures. If they can be perceived by certain elements nationally of aiding this effort, well, then they get a lot of checks and a lot of attention. And we have a New York politician and a DC politician. So their constituencies, presumably, Lisa, are already kind of foaming anti-gunners.
All right, is this an effort to shut Trump up about the Second Amendment because it makes him look dirty to be associated with the NRA?
I think that's probably just icing on the cake, Lisa. The effort for Donald Trump to kind of defend the assault against the NRA and the free speech attack, that will just be basically called more politics rather than a genuine effort to defend basically their civil rights. So yeah, it's a twofer.
All right, is the NRA fighting back with a lawsuit of their own?
They have filed a lawsuit. Now, strictly speaking, what they've filed is a kind of checklist sheet that you file before you file a lawsuit. So we don't yet have all the information they may allege, but their filing of the lawsuit itself, Lisa, is I write in the pages of libertynation.com, may be part of the conspiracy, which is to say all of the calories burned, money spent, and effort. This has no doubt been an all hands on deck 24-hour type affair for them to respond to, which of course is time they're not spending advancing the interests of the Americans who they represent.
What did the suits allege, Scott? I know you're in the weeds, but I'm not sure our viewers know every little jot and tittle.
Basically, what the suit alleges is that Wayne LaPierre and three people that he controlled at the head of the National Rifle Association used member funds inappropriately, whether it was through kind of loop back ways of getting money into their own pockets in ways they wouldn't otherwise be able to, or luxury, ultra luxury private jet travel, indeed for Mr. LaPierre's family when he wasn't even accompanying them, for instance. And they've asked the court, Letitia James has asked the court to legally extinguish the NRA because she says that the 4 people who've spent inappropriately, that's the correct remedy for the membership. In other words, she's saying that she's representing the membership in this regard, and to do the best thing for them in light of these troubles is to extinguish the organization. And that's what is so outrageous about the actions, Lisa.
All right, so just to be clear, they're not suing the NRA proper, they're suing the NRA 501c3 Foundation.
So it's a double hit. The Attorney General for New York is suing the NRA, which was incorporated in New York, and the Attorney General for Washington, D.C. is suing the NRA Charitable Foundation, which was incorporated in Washington, D.C. And they're using their powers as kind of the overseers of incorporated entities in those states to launch these suits.
All right, but you're a lawyer, but you're also an NRA member, and frankly, so am I. So what do you make of this as a member?
I consider it an assault on my free speech rights as an American and an attempt to hobble the people that I've elevated to be a voice for me to say that I wish to maintain my rights to keep and bear arms and defend them. And I think that the Trump administration should at least investigate the possibility that these 2 Soros-aligned prosecutors who promised during their campaigns to discriminate against the NRA and gun owners are doing just that, not for legally permissible reasons, but for impermissible political ones.
Sounds like dirty tricks, Scott.
Sure does.
Thanks. That's Liberty Nation's legal affairs editor, Scott Cosenza, Esquire. Thanks for joining us on Truth TV today, Scott.
Keep your powder dry.
Truth is making a comeback.
After a long, very long deliberation, Democrat Joe Biden announced his pick for VP. To almost no one's surprise, Kamala Harris will complete the Biden ticket. This is not the first black running for such a high office, nor is it the first woman. Still, Harris checks all the right boxes in the intersectionality category. But the question is, will women come out for the Dems because they like Harris? Or, much like Hillary, will they stay at home because they don't like her? Liberty Nation's national correspondent Sarah Cowgill has been taking the pulse of this crucial voting bloc and joins us now with the skinny on Kamala. Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for joining us on Truth TV.
Always a pleasure, Lisa.
All right, first of all, what do you know about Kamala's background and personality and whether she has the appeal to her own gender?
Oh, I think she, I haven't hung out with her. I didn't smoke pot in college with her and listen to Tupac.
Oh, yes, you did.
Anyway, she seems to be a pandering sort, and I'm not sure why. She has a pedigree. She's got a good, background to fall back on. She has maybe worked her way to the top professionally in a lot of different ways, but she's a smart cookie. And I don't see how that is going to help her right now get anywhere. I mean, she's not using her smarts and her wits. She's using random stories and trying to suck up to people, and I don't think that's going to help her.
Well, looking back to 2016, it's really women that made the difference for Trump. And let's face it, a lot of women just simply did not like Hillary Clinton. She was sort of out of step with them generationally. I mean, I know a lot of women that wear pantsuits. And she had this cackle that kind of grated on people. Does Kamala Harris come with the same sort of baggage, or is she an entirely different animal?
Oh, she's a different animal, but Hillary Clinton was a panderer. She knew she could not become popular all of a sudden. I mean, she just is not a likable person. Kamala doesn't seem to be that much more likable than Hillary, but she seems a little bit more with it. I don't know how else to explain it. She's like, right in the middle of the age group. She's not wearing a pantsuit all the time, but she also has her own little set of quirky things that nobody seems to like about her, which is she's screaming and yelling instead of asking questions in Senate hearings. And she comes off a little rough around the edges and a little angry. And nobody really likes angry women.
Well, that's a good point. But it is good to have somebody who's with it on that ticket. Considering Biden's age, she's 22 years younger than him, and his cognitive issues. Do you think she's up to the challenge of becoming president?
Not yet. I don't know if she will be up to the challenge of becoming president by election day. I know she's been in a bubble. She's been in a liberal bubble most of her adult life in California, in her professional life. She's in a liberal, happy, bubble in the Senate where she's kind of allowed to do her own thing, and the media fawns over her, and they're doing that now. But when it comes down to opening your mouth and inserting your foot, that's where she's going to get herself into trouble. It's her own words come back to haunt her. She comes up with random stories that seem to make sense for the subject matter, but it doesn't mean they're true. And I think that the media is not going to be as kind to her as they have been thus far.
All right, I know you have friends out in the heartland that are both Democrats and Republicans. What do the Democratic women like about her, and what do the Republican women not like about her?
The Democratic women like her because she's a woman. Democrats want a woman. I mean, I have several friends that they don't care as long as it's a woman, which I think is ridiculous. The Republican women, they don't like a lot of, it's conservative around here. Nobody seems to like that Willie Brown kind of relationship and that kind of smudge on a reputation. I know it sounds archaic, but we are in the conservative part of the world here, and they just don't like it. They do not like the fact that there are rumors out there about that relationship. So that's going to be a dog ear on her record for the Heartland.
Okay, so that brings up her character, and what is the going talk about Kamala Harris's character out in the Heartland?
It really, they don't like her. She's going to have to turn that tide. It's not that she has to earn it. She has to undo it. They watched in horror the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, and that's not anything that a good conservative group of people like the silent majority want to have in the White House. They just don't like it.
What about people like George Stephanopoulos calling Kamala Harris a moderate?
No, she's not a moderate. She's either so pandering progressive, or she's, packing the gulags in California with, Hispanic and Black prisoners under her AG, Attorney General reign. So she's nowhere to be classified as a moderate or a progressive or a conservative. She's a mixed bag of all those things. It's a little bit kind of crazy.
So going back to the last female vice presidential candidate, Sarah Palin, she had a knowledge problem. What is Kamala Harris's Achilles heel?
Her own words. She's going to trip up. She is going to do and say whatever she thinks in the moment, and it's not going to be right. And it's going to be, she might be a bigger gaffe machine than Joe Biden, even though she won't sound as bad. So I think her own words are going to come back and bite her.
All righty, we'll see if you're right. That's Liberty Nation's national correspondent, Sarah Cowgill, hailing from the Heartland. Thanks so much for joining us on Truth TV, Sarah.
Anytime, Lisa.
And do tune in to libertynation.com for Sarah's fine articles.
Truth is making a comeback.
The biggest question regarding the presidential election is not who will win, but will Americans ever really know who won? Individual states are poised to mail out millions of ballots as the November contest for president draws nigh. This drip, drip, drip of opportunities to vote signifies a looming storm of epic proportions. Are we prepared for the coming tempest? There are a few reasons to fret about a presidential election determined by mail. First is the ability of the Postal Service to handle the volume. Next is the voter rolls, which determine who receives a ballot. And finally, the sheer unprecedented nature of conducting an election in a manner that has not been done before. An analysis conducted by the New York Times reveals over 76% of Americans will be able to vote by mail. The newspaper's research shows that 38 million voters in 8 states, including the District of Columbia, will get a ballot in their mailbox. Another 58% of U.S. citizens, approximately 120 million people in 34 states, will be able to vote by absentee ballot. Only 24% of those voting absentee will need an excuse to cast their ballot by mail other than coronavirus. The Gray Lady calls this a rapid and seismic shift. No kidding. Even left-leaning NPR thinks this is no tempest in a teapot. An NPR article titled "Signed, Sealed, and Undelivered: Thousands of Mail-in Ballots Rejected for Tardiness" points out that mail-in voting is, quote, fraught with potential problems because hundreds of thousands of ballots go unaccounted each year. Their analysis shows that more than 65,000 absentee or mail-in ballots were rejected in the primary elections this year. This change in the way Americans exercise their franchise is ostensibly due to the coronavirus. Suffice it to say that mail-in voting is only as good as the voting rolls, and therein lies the rub. Dogs, dead people, and multiple ballots going out to single individuals are common in the current mail-in ballot climate. This is because many states have not taken the time to cull their voter rolls. The head of the Public Interest Legal Foundation recently told Liberty Nation that the number of problems on the voter rolls are about the same number of problems that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by in 2016. This is because the voter rolls are a mess. They claim, quote, "This is not a state problem, this is an American problem." A recent column in the Washington Post argues, quote, "Trump is right that mail-in voting is a source of potential voter fraud, especially on the scale that is being proposed. But the bigger problem is not vote fraud, it's vote failure," unquote. Citing an MIT study of the 2008 presidential election, the article points out that 3.9 million voters said they requested mail-in ballots but never received them. 2.9 million ballots that were sent out did not make it back to the election officials, and about 800,000 were rejected for a variety of reasons, whether they were late, they weren't postmarked, or they weren't signed. Their conclusion, the pipeline that moves mail ballots between voters and election officials is, quote, "very leaky." By and large, Republicans prefer a more controlled election process, while Democrats tend to be loose about who votes, when, and where. However, the accuracy of the upcoming election is not a partisan issue, but rather one of national concern. Will citizens be able to trust that their vote has been counted? And ultimately, will they be able to have faith in the accuracy of the outcome? Whether it's in the hallowed halls of justice or Congress, something can and should be done now to ensure a fair and timely election result. If nothing is done by November 3rd, Americans may look back at the business of hanging chads as a walk in the park. And that's my viewpoint for today.
Truth is making a comeback.
That's it for another edition of Truth TV. Thanks so much for watching. And remember to look for Liberty Nation in your favorite search engine. Subscribe to our popular conservative news daily briefing and our Roku channel. And remember, liberty all the time and everywhere.
Ready, set, go.
Stay ahead of the curve with LibertyNation.com, because we put the power of the press in your hands. With one click, Liberty Nation delivers tomorrow's news.
And remember, liberty
Today.
all the time and everywhere.
Liberty Nation connected the dots between a Chinese research biolab and a wet market where COVID-19 was supposedly discovered 2 months before the MSM. We were first to alert you of a serious attack on gun rights in Virginia. LN honed in on the Biden-Burisma scandal months before it hit the papers. We brought you exclusive interviews from the border.
We're looking at people just rising up.
Liberty Nation was on the ground in London,
Trump rally in front of the American embassy,
bringing you on-the-scene reports about Brexit. LN reported that COVID-19 was more virulent but less deadly weeks before others. LibertyNation.com delivers tomorrow's news today with LNTV's Liberty Nation Radio, The Uprising and Rabbit Hole podcasts, and dozens of insightful original articles and a new Roku channel. Stay ahead of the curve with LibertyNation.com and get tomorrow's news today. LibertyNation.com.
Truth is making a comeback. Visit us at libertynation.com.